In 2002, the Oakland Athletics front office, led by general manager Billy Beane, were faced with what seemed like an insurmountable challenge: win an MLB championship with a player budget almost 3 times smaller than the richest teams in the league. Because Major League Baseball doesn't have a salary cap, the A's, among other small market franchises, operate at an automatic disadvantage to big market teams like the Yankees and Red Sox, who can simply buy their way to the top of the standings year in and year out. Beane and his colleagues complained that the MLB was no longer a league of baseball teams, rather a league that determines its winners by who spent the most money, a phenomenon they referred to as Moneyball. In order to game the unfair system of Moneyball, Beane and company turned to something that had never been tried in professional sports and was widely regarded as idiotic to pursue. They decided to center their entire front office philosophy around statistical and analytical algorithms to determine the value of players and correlate their worth on the field to a dollar amount that would be commensurate with the value they brought to the field. Despite vehement opposition from baseball purists, the A's went on a string of successful seasons and quickly inspired other teams, such as the Boston Red Sox, to adopt their model of statistics and analytics-based baseball operations. Using this model, Boston was able to successfully break the curse of the Bambino in 2004 and win their first World Series championship in 86 years. Within a couple of years, every team in the MLB had adopted the Moneyball methodology, and the statistical revolution has in turn bled into every other professional sport. 2 decades after the statistical revolution changed sports management forever, the Baltimore Ravens are shaping their roster around principles that have the potential to be for professional football what Moneyball was for baseball. Unlike the A's, who are working against an unfair system, the Ravens are in a league with a hard salary cap, which means that the league imposes strict standards as to just how much money teams are able to spend on their players in any given season. Where in baseball the challenge was that certain teams had more money than other teams, the challenge for NFL front offices is that certain position groups garner higher salaries than others, commonly referred to as premium positions. These position groups include wide receivers, offensive tackles, edge rushers, cornerbacks, and most of all, quarterbacks. These positions have commonly been referred to as the most impactful players on the field for a bevy of different reasons, and because of that, these players can command very large salaries that limit their team's resources to invest in other players on their roster. Currently, the market for corners is set at $21 million, the offensive tackle market is set at $23 million, edge rushers are at $28 million per year, and wide receivers are at $30 million, with the quarterbacks rounding everything out at a whopping $50 million per year. At these prices, a premium cover corner or left tackle will take up about 10% of your team's total player budget for a year, an elite edge rusher or receiver would take up around 15%, and a franchise QB will cost nearly a whopping 25% of your entire team's budget for any given season. With these prices for premium positions in a hard salary cap league, obviously it's impossible to afford top-of-market players at all of these positions, and this dilemma is at the heart of why there is so much turnover and parity in the NFL on a yearly basis. Dynasties in the NFL are extremely rare today, and the only dynasty to exist in the 21st century, the Patriots dynasty, was only made possible because of an all-time great head coach with a knack for getting the most out of his players and letting guys walk when their asking prices exceeded their value to the team, and an all-time great quarterback who was willing to take one pay cut after another in order to supplement the roster with more talent. Now that the Ravens have found their undoubted future at the league's most premium and therefore expensive position in Lamar Jackson, GM Eric DeCosta seems to have shifted their strategy to attempt to replicate the value of paying for high-end talent at premium positions without paying the premium price tag for players in so-called premium positions. In the early 2000s, the Oakland A's identified that from a purely statistical value standpoint, there was no difference in value between a single and a walk. Because of this, they began to value players who had higher on-base percentages, because at the end of the day, when players get on base, the chances for a team to accumulate runs in that inning goes up significantly. Similarly, the Ravens are investing in high-end talents in what are traditionally viewed as low-value positions, such as tight end, interior offensive line, safety, and special team specialists. Instead of investing 10% of their player budget on a shutdown number 1 corner, the Ravens are building a defense centered around deception and applying pressure to opposing offenses in creative ways. This is evidenced by them drafting Notre Dame safety Kyle Hamilton 14th overall in this year's NFL draft. Hamilton was widely regarded as a blue-chip safety prospect and a potential top 5 pick due to the versatility his unique combination of size, speed, and coverage ability brings to the table. His diverse skill set will allow defensive play caller Mike McDonald to call a bevy of exotic defensive coverages aimed at confusing opposing quarterbacks during their post-snap processing. And instead of investing 15% of their budget on a bona fide number one receiver, they've invested heavily at the tight end position and on the offensive line. Greg Roman's offense is heavily reliant on his legendary run scheme, and their investment in versatile tight ends like Mark Andrews and 4th-round pick this year Charlie Kolar out of Iowa State allows this team to have the size to dominate on the ground as well as to dominate through the air. Andrews is one of the best tight ends in all of football and is Lamar Jackson's safety blanket, and opposing defenses focus on him the same way they would any other number one receiver. Yet despite the value he brings to both the run and pass game, the high-end tight end market is half of what the high-end receiver market is set at currently. Not only that, but with their second first-round pick in this year's NFL draft, the Ravens decided to draft one of the best center prospects in recent memory in Iowa's Tyler Linderbaum. He will likely be an all-pro caliber talent at a crucial position in their offense, despite the fact that the market for centers is nearly $10 million less than a premium left tackle. Instead of paying astronomical prices for a few extremely talented players at so-called premium positions, the Ravens can accrue more high-end talents on their roster for less money and give themselves a competitive advantage over those who spend a large percentage of their annual budget on a few key stars and strangle their ability to build a complete roster year in and year out. Obviously, Baltimore is going to pay market value for their superstar quarterback Lamar Jackson, and his contract is likely to eat up a fourth of the Ravens' annual budget. By investing in high-end talents in undervalued position groups, in theory, they will be able to keep more of these top-tier talents to surround Lamar with throughout his career, increasing their chances of winning championships while Lamar is still under center. DeCosta and the Ravens are doing something that no one else in the league is doing right now, and if it pays off, they could potentially change the way front offices and the NFL operate for years to come. Just because I love what their front office is doing, though, doesn't mean I think it's a surefire bet that Baltimore lands yet another Lombardi trophy to fill their trophy case. Lamar has not played well in his 3 trips to the playoffs so far in his young career, and last season, teams started to figure out that Greg Roman's offense, while brilliant in the run game, has some serious holes in the passing game, namely against cover zero blitzes. And if they come into next season without any answers as to how to address those issues in 2022, Baltimore could be a major disappointment next season, no matter how clever they are in the front office. What gets me excited, however, is that this is something we haven't really seen tried in the NFL before. If DeCosta and company strike gold here, we may very well be looking at the start of something special and the beginning of a script that could cement this team in NFL history, and if we're lucky, on the big screen. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and until next time, peace, guys.